Like icons Cher and Prince, Flordelis goes by only one name. Born in Jacarezinho, the third largest favela in Rio de Janeiro, Flordelis began her career as an evangelical missionary for misguided youth trapped within the sociopolitics of favela poverty. Once a celebrated vocalist, affluent pastor overseeing 6 megachurches, and accomplished politician, her ascent to fame followed an extraordinary path as she became the mother of 55 children. Her preaching on the streets and charismatic speeches soon led her to command large audiences, including celebrities and high-ranking politicians. Flordelis' story of love and redemption inspired many, and she claimed to have been chosen by God. Boasting 1 million Instagram followers, she embodied the nation's idealized figure and earned the title of Mother of the Nation. However, her image as a saint was tarnished by scandals of corruption, strange love affairs, and a murder investigation. This is the tale of how the once revered evangelical empire of Flordelis came crashing down. Flordelis dos Santos Souza was born on February 5, 1961, and grew up in the favelas of Brazil, a tin roof slum of 60,000 people on the industrial northern end of Rio that was controlled by a drug gang. Her parents were members of what would become Brazil's largest evangelical church. Tragically, Lee's brother and father were killed in a traffic accident when she was just in her early teens. As the late 1980s unfolded, the neighborhood descended further into a spiral of crime and drug-related violence, earning it one of the highest murder rates globally. Amidst this chaotic backdrop of cocaine and gunfire, Flordelis and her mother established their own storefront church. Despite the risks, she embarked on a journey to preach in prisons, aid prostitutes, and extend her evangelism to a local gathering place for the homeless and hardened criminals. Every Friday at midnight, Flordelis, accompanied by her devoted disciples, ventured out from her family church to engage young gang members, seeking to convert them to Christianity. She also began offering her cramped home as a sort of shelter, and her following grew. Fast forward a few years, at one of her regular services, she and her biological daughter Simone met Anderson do Carmo. Teenage romance bloomed between him and Simone, and soon after, he was welcomed into the fold as the 5th adoptive child, which means he was technically dating his sister. Between 1 and 7 years later, depending on whom you ask, do Carmo broke up with Simone and started dating Flordelis, his adoptive mother. They were shortly married, which bizarrely made de Carmo a stepfather to his ex-girlfriend. In 1994, while preaching at the Rio Central train station, Flordelis was approached by a woman who confessed to abandoning her newborn and asked Flordelis to adopt the child. Agreeing to the request, she found the baby where the mother had left her and brought it home. Days later, the same woman returned with 37 more children, including 14 infants, who were victims of a recent attack where corrupt officers killed their parents and caregivers. Flordelis and her husband Anderson already had 8 children, but they made the decision to take in 37 more children and teenagers who were victims of a recent attack. These children had lost their parents and caregivers and were in dire need of a safe home. Word began spreading about this woman in her 30s housing nearly 50 children in her tiny shack, which catapulted her name into the public eye. However, child welfare checks would later uncover that despite her reputation in the favela, her status did not provide enough resources to sustain that many children, so she sent the children to scavenge for food and supplies in the streets and dumpsters of Rio. There was also no evidence of any legal adoption process for any of the children. When these findings were published, child protection workers and city officials became concerned, leading to a judge demanding that Flordelis attend a court hearing. Instead of facing the consequences, Flordelis took a drastic step and took all of the children and went into hiding. She arranged a meeting with an official from the United Nations who had previously lobbied to have police hunt her down. And the officials were so moved by her story that they decided to take her side with help from the children's advocate. She legalized her custody, creating the Flordelis Family Home Association as an umbrella group. This new media attention brought some favorable publicity to the growing family, and subsequently donations from the public. In 1999, Flordelis and her husband co-founded a church operating from a garage in their temporary home. What began as prayer sessions gradually evolved into weekly singing performances led by Flordelis. Carmo emerged as an evangelical darling within Jacarezinho. In fact, by 2003, his sermons had elevated the ministry of Flordelis to a larger audience, transforming the once quaint parish into the church's next iteration, the City of Fire. And Flordelis was quickly becoming one of the most famous, charismatic evangelical figures in Brazil. She garnered increased attention, and media coverage continued to portray her in a positive light. A film based on her purportedly saintly life was released in 2009, featuring acclaimed soap actors and premiering at the prestigious Rio International Film Festival, where the family received a grand reception on the red carpet. While the film itself did not fare well, Flordelis' celebrity status grew, leading to an offer from MK Music, one of Rio de Janeiro's top gospel labels, to release her debut album in 2010. In 2018, Flordelis ran for a seat in Brazil's House of Congress and won the election in a landslide victory and was sworn into office. Early in the morning of June 16, 2019, Flordelis and her husband crossed the Guanabara Bay Bridge headed to Niterói, their place of residence after a date night. Flordelis claimed she and her husband became the targets of two enraged men on a motorcycle. Desperate to escape, her husband accelerated and swiftly pulled into their driveway, but as they tried to enter their home, he was mercilessly shot 30 times and succumbed to his wounds. Flordelis, on the other hand, was spared as the robbers ransacked their house. Initially, the media portrayed the incident as an attack on a prominent political figure, another victim of a corrupt political system. Little did they know what lay beneath the surface. Merely 15 hours after her husband's murder, Flordelis delivered a heart-wrenching eulogy behind oversized sunglasses. Even at his wake, attended by 2,500 mourners, she took the stage to deliver a sermon, recounting a prophetic dream shared by one of her children. However, the aftermath took a sinister turn as two of her sons were arrested shortly after the service. Shockingly, it was revealed that Anderson, her husband, was killed with a gun obtained by one of their adopted children. One of her sons, 18-year-old Lucas, pleaded guilty and accused another brother, 38-year-old Flavio, of carrying out the actual murder. The downfall of Flordelis took a swift and shocking turn as disturbing details emerged, including claims the pastor had been found semi-nude and shot more than 30 times in the groin and the upper thighs. There were also claims that the married couple spent their last night together in a swingers club. Despite her claims of innocence, the closure of 5 out of 6 churches and her suspension from her political party signaled a shift in public opinion. It was also revealed that she had attempted to have him killed at least 6 other times by poisoning his food and drinks with arsenic or in staged robberies. Although charges were brought against Flordelis and several family members, her parliamentary immunity shielded her from immediate arrest, but her political immunity was finally stripped away in August 2021. In November 2022, Flordelis was convicted and sentenced to 50 years and 28 days in prison, while the other accomplices in the murder received lesser sentences. It would be a dark end to a story that has fascinated the Brazilian public for years. This was the cautionary tale of Flordelis dos Santos Souza,